Welcome to Chatsunami. Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Chatsunami. My name's Satsunami and joining me today is none other than the fantastic CEO herself. It is Anna from Valiant Games Studio. Anna, welcome to Chatsunami.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, how are you doing today?
I'm good. A little bit stressed, or I don't know, a hangover stress maybe from releasing my latest game a couple of weeks ago. But apart from that, I'm doing really well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that. Well, I'm glad to hear that you've released the game and everything, not the stress. That would be a terrible way to begin to say, oh, I'm glad to hear that. But no, absolutely. Because as I was saying there, you're indeed the CEO of Valiant Games Studio that honestly has such an extensive list of games to your name. Because, and I hope you don't mind me saying, I was having a look earlier to see the kind of games that you'd made. And one of them, which actually is the reason that you and I crossed paths on social media, was your latest game, KreatureKind, which is it right in saying a deck builder type game?
Yeah, deck builder, card battler. Honestly, I don't fully know where the one begins and one ends, so I usually use both those. Roguelite, unlike many other games in the genre, it's more wholesome and it's approachable, it's very colorful, and I want to be inviting to new players because I feel like a lot of games in the same genre, they might look a little bit daunting when you first see them. Like if you're new to Steam, you might not start with Slay the Spire. So I just wanted to lower the bar a little bit and make it easier for people to get into this type of game.
Oh no, absolutely. And I have to say, as someone who has played it, thanks to yourself graciously giving me a key to it, it is such a surprising game. And I mean that in all the best ways, because as soon as I saw it, I wasn't sure what type of game it was going to be. I knew it was a deck builder and everything, and I thought, is it going to be like these other ones that have come out? But the thing that really took me off guard, and again in all the best ways, was the fact that it wasn't a violent game, if that makes sense. The core of it is that you're playing as a character who's trying to restore magic, or mana rather, to the world. I thought, right, okay, are we going to be battling monsters? Are we going to be diving in fist first? But then when I saw it was all about using these cards to essentially debate in a turn-based combat style, and I use combat loosely, I mean verbal combat here, but I thought it was so unique, and of course the characters were so vibrant. I loved the designs of them, the music as well, that lo-fi track, because I am a sucker for lo-fi, not gonna lie. So I've got to ask, what was the inspiration behind making it the way it's turned out? Because am I right in saying that the alpha version had swords and things?
It did have swords in the beginning, but there was sort of an angle to it. There was also a reason why there aren't any swords anymore. So to take you back from the very beginning, it actually started when I say we because then I had two people working with me in the company. Right now I'm only one person working full time, but I work with freelancers. But we were working on our first game called Pendula Swing, and we were sitting at lunch and we saw this article about a young girl who had found a sword in a lake. In the real world, a girl had found a sword in a lake. And I was reminded of another article that I'd read just a couple of months earlier about another girl who had found a sword in a lake. And I was like, what is going on? This is very random. And clearly there must be some magical explanation for this, right? It's like we started together sort of build this sort of narrative of what's going on. Why are these girls finding swords? And like, of course, they're chosen by some deity. And then later when it was time to make the next game, we sort of kept spinning this story basically and sort of seeing where it took us. And what I came up with when we started pre-production was basically that the swords, they enhance whichever inherent abilities you have. So like if you're a very empathetic person, your empathy just goes on steroids. Or if you're very good at hacking, you become a better hacker, whatever it is. Like it was meant to be you become a better fighter because it's a sword. But, new times call for new heroes. So they didn't need big burly guys with swords anymore. They needed empathetic fighters who could save magic instead, or save the world in other ways. But it turns out when you make a non-violent game, game, having swords in the game, it didn't really work out, basically. So no one understood really what the game was about. So the swords were removed and the story was quite reworked as well. So in the beginning, it was more like monsters in our real world were starting to come out and start to wreak havoc. So like the actual Yeti in the Himalayas was coming out and disturbing the peace of the people there. So you sort of went to different continents and met different cryptids from different cultures, but just didn't really click. It didn't really work out. And also at that point, it was more linear and there was a big bad that you had to convince in the end. It was basically going to the UN and saying, hey, can we please do something about this? But then I realized in the real world, there isn't really a big bad that you can sort of defeat and then everything is going to be fine. That's just not how the world works. So that's why I wanted to make it more about winning influence instead, like building a movement so that we all together work towards the same goal. So that's how the game works now instead. So it's a fictional world instead because it just gave so much more room to play around with. And also, yeah, like I said, it's about building this movement, about recruiting more and more people to your side, both playable characters and also just talking to all these different magical factions and getting them to understand the importance of now conserving mana and taking care of magic so that you don't run out of magic entirely. So that's shifted over time. It's always been a non-violent game and it's always been basically essentially an environmentalist game, but it's just the packaging has changed and the swords are now gone because that just, don't make non-violent games with weapons because people get very confused. That's a lesson learned.
Yeah, because I have to say, when I was researching this game, I was looking going, that's interesting. They used to have swords. And then, of course, when I was playing it, there's obviously no hint of a sword. Honestly, I thought the combat and things, if you can even call it combat, because it is, gameplay-wise, it's combat, but I thought it was interesting the way that you'd split it up. So for anyone who isn't quite aware, and trust me, you will probably be buying a copy after this episode.
Please do.
Yeah, please. Honestly, it's a great game, but it's split into 3 separate, and again, I use it loosely to say attack types. You've got the emotional debate, you've got the intellectual one, and you've got the logical one. Is that right?
Yeah, rational, factual, and emotional, yeah.
That's the one, thank you. The characters that you're debating against, their health bars aren't just, well, some of them are one long bar of health, but some of them are split based on the different types of debates that you can have against them and how effective that's going to be. So essentially it breaks up the combat and it breaks it up rather than just saying, oh, I'm overpowered, I'm just going to click the one that gives you minus 500 or whatever points. You can't really do that, and it paces you out and it makes you think, right, what am I going to do here? Am I going to use this card? Am I going to use that? How am I going to build the deck? I thought it was genius when I was playing it, because initially I was like, oh, I'm not sure about this because I'm so used to having one health bar in turn-based games. But then I realised actually that is perfect for this type of game, that it's allowing you to breathe with these characters. It's not just you're mashing the button going, okay, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It allows you to get to grips with the game. It allows you to get to grips with the setting and everything. Again, I'm not just saying this because you're here, but it is such a fantastic way that you've built up the game, especially the characters as well. I thought the characters and the artwork as well was done absolutely brilliantly as well, because it really gives you a feel for this fantasy world that at the same time has a small sense of familiarity to it. It's not like you're saying, oh, this is Whimsyland, and you step in and you're like, oh, this is completely different. I don't know what I'm doing here. You've got the urban areas. It almost reminded me at some points of, Coffee Talk?
Yeah.
Where it's like the hybrid between that fantasy element, and obviously not all of the stages are modern, but you've got the streets and things and the big grey skyscrapers in the background. Yeah, I thought it was so interesting that you had characters who, again, going back to what you were saying about this environmental message, that they were using their mana and magic for just the silliest of reasons, that it wasn't even, oh, I'm going to conquer the world, or oh, I'm going to do this. It was like, oh, I'm making a spell to make better cakes, or I'm making a spell to make a great song, those kind of things. And I thought that was just really clever and really well done.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for all of this. I feel like barraged with positive feedback here. I really appreciate it. No, but I feel like since it's about environmentalism, basically how we treat our world today, I feel like grounding it a little bit in our world and like making it modern. So sure, it's Mothman and it's Goatman and a Yeti and stuff like that. Like it's cryptids and monsters, and some of them are mythological monsters as well that we might know from ancient Egypt. But still, I wanted to feel contemporary. Like I wanted to empathize and really connect with the characters. And also I wanted it to be funny. I wanted it to be lighthearted and tongue-in-cheek, because I think that's the best way of sort of relating to it. Because it's so easy when it's about environmentalism and it's about sustainability that it feels very heavy and you maybe even check out a little bit because it just gets so dark. So I want it to be fun. And yeah, like I said, like you talked about, if you find their reasons for using magic and using mana to be silly, then hopefully maybe you reflect a little bit on our world. Like, what are we using our resources for? Is it always really that? Do we really need to do everything that we are doing? And on a little bit more serious side, I also wanted to give a little bit of a toolkit for if you meet people who you disagree with, how can you meet their arguments? So there is a little bit of a serious side to that as well. I find that humor or keeping it quite lighthearted makes it easier for people to actually listen and actually keep playing the game. So hopefully I managed to reach that goal.
Oh no, totally. Funny enough, one of my friends who's also a fellow podcaster, Marie from the Two Girls One Reusable Cup podcast, she also runs a sustainability podcast. And trust me, if she's listening to this, she's probably away to download this game right now to be like, I'm going to check it out. But one of the things that we had talked about as well when we were talking about her podcast in particular was, yeah, just that idea of what you were saying there, that it's quite a heavy topic when it comes to environmentalism and sustainability, but it's also so important.
Yes.
And it's trying to reach that balance in between because, and again, not getting into the nitty-gritty too much, but there's a lot of internet discourse where people really don't want to listen to certain things, or a lot of things, especially for sustainability, it gets muted or buried under other content and things. It's such a shame because obviously it's important, but again, the way that you've incorporated that message into this game is absolutely fantastic. Kind of sidestepping the game for a second, and don't worry, we will come back to it, but I was looking at your other projects and your other games, and I saw that you also did something called Biosquare. First of all, I want to ask a bit about that. How did you come up with that and such? And also, has sustainability always been a core theme that you've always tried to incorporate into your games and any projects?
Yeah, to answer your second question first, yeah, for me, sustainability is, I care about a lot of social issues of all kinds. We have a lot to improve in our world, and I'm a little bit of an optimist. I think that we can together make the world better for everyone, kinder and more inclusive and so on. But I think sustainability is pretty much the most important issue, because if we don't have a world that we can inhabit, then nothing else matters. So it sort of trumps everything. And I think also that games, like, they are entertainment, and I think to a large extent they should be, and we do need escapism as well. But I do feel like we have such power as game developers to be part of the narrative in our society, and like we can shape the way we talk about certain issues. If it's in a more optimistic, fun way that I chose to do it in KreatureKind, or if it's a game more about sustainability, like maybe more serious, more of an educational game. We have such a strong voice, and I think that we should use it. I usually try to incorporate some more serious issues into my games, even if it's sort of more under the surface, because it's hard not to. I want to, as a writer, it's hard to not talk about the issues that I find most important, because that's what art is. We should use art to talk about what some people consider politics, because otherwise I think art is kind of meaningless. The point of it is to question authority and so on, in my opinion. Yeah, to answer your first question, so Biosquare is a game that is way more actually realistic and actually more educational, I suppose. The point is to mimic real world projects, primarily from the UN, but also other organizations that are working in the Sahel region in South Sahara, in the Sahara Desert in Africa. So the point is to sort of show how to reforest and like take care of the lands there and stop the spread of the Sahara Desert. There are many really good and really successful projects in that region, thanks to the Great Green Wall, which is a flagship project from the UN. And what we also want to do with the game is to support these projects through the game. So you will not only learn and sort of use the same methods as they use in the game, but also you will be able to learn about the actual real world projects and be able to donate to them. And part of the proceeds will go to the projects and so on as well. This project project I didn't actually come up with myself. I got to know the brain behind it a couple of years ago, and I've chosen to sort of jump on and use my knowledge and network and so on as a game developer in Valiant to try and get that project off the ground. Full disclosure, it has been a little bit hard to get funding, so we're working on that right now to sort of really get the project started for real. We are in talks with several different organizations working in the African continent. We're really hopeful, and we hope that we can soon really kick this into gear properly so that we can start making the game.
Honestly, that is absolutely fantastic. It is just such an important thing. Again, going back to what I was saying before, it is just such an important topic to address, and especially through the medium of both game design and something that is also educational. Because if you look at a game like, just off the top of my head, something like Sonic the Hedgehog, where you've got, at least with the older games, you had this semi-environmental message of a blue hedgehog fighting this scientist and everything, but the message kind of gets lost in the spectacle of it. You know, it's like you can't really sit someone down after playing Sonic and go, now what have you learned today? I mean, some people might, but, you know, at the same time, these kind of games are just so important to be out there. Out of curiosity, because I know you've been doing this since, is it right in saying 2017?
Yeah, so with Valiant, Valiant has been around since 2017. I personally have been indie developer for 2 years before that. I guess I had a small company. Before that, it was a sole proprietorship. But I've been a game developer for a few more years, even beyond that. 14 years personally, Valiant since 2017.
Do you feel as if, see from when you started to, especially nowadays, and definitely in a post-COVID world, as it were, do you feel there's been a shift in the attitudes in game design and the landscape of gaming as a whole?
I think it depends. I think definitely there are a lot of game developers who make more serious games and like to talk about serious issues. But then again, there are so many more fun entertainment games as well. Like I think games are just like the games industry keeps growing in Sweden, where I'm based, and in other parts of the world as well. Like so many new countries are popping up and new continents are started to be represented. Like the African continent, for example, more and more game developers or game development hubs are popping up there, and game development companies and so on. And I think that's really interesting. So I feel like we're just getting more of everything. And I think that's great. And I think that more and more voices are getting heard, which is amazing as well. These voices come from more places. There is, of course, also the opposite trend as well, like the lists of woke games. And I've seen several curators on Steam that warn you against that and so on. So, of course, there is also always that movement of people and players who don't want to see quote unquote politics in games. And of course, just the climate in general in the world is obviously as it is. We're getting very political here in this podcast, but yeah, we all know what's going on in the world. So like I said, of course, there are always entertainment games that are purely entertainment and that don't really touch upon anything outside of that. And that I think that's completely fine. And also, I think that a lot of creators feel the need to talk about more topical issues. Like I said, art is inherently political. If you're consciously trying to not talk about anything political or anything like touch upon anything that's going on in the world, then that is also a conscious choice that you have made. And I think we are, in my opinion, if all games to a large degree don't use our voices, I think that's really a shame, because we can be such a force for good. And what a person's good is, that's of course up to you. My good will be different from someone else's good. But if we don't try and make the world better in some shape or form, I think we are really missing an opportunity that we have as game developers.
Honestly, I think that is such an important message to put out, because that's the thing as well. I mean, whether someone is a influential content creator or, especially in your case, a prolific game developer, it is important that A, you want to make the games that you want to make, and then B, you want to put in what you think is right to put in said game. Again, going back to KreatureKind, when you were talking about the main characters having swords and then not having swords, and then moving into the fantasy world as opposed to the real life, the fact that although these design choices can change over the course of it, the core message at heart still stays the same. And I want to totally co-sign what you said there, just about the very undesirable people, as it were, who have created these quote-unquote lists and have said, oh, back in my day, it wasn't woke, and oh, there was no politics.
There was, though.
Yeah.
It depends on what you call politics, and also depends on, I think some people played with rose-tinted glasses, or maybe they were children when they play those games. Let's say Final Fantasy VII is a very political game, and that it's an environmental game. So if you like Final Fantasy VII and don't like woke games, I have bad news for you. And people talk about, I know the BioShock games because they're not political. I'm like, well, okay. So what do you think a political game is? So yeah.
See, as someone who in a month or two is going to be doing a full month of BioShock, I cannot emphasize more that is such a political game.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Ayn Rand has a lot to answer for that. Objectivism, look it up, guys, come on. But yeah, I'm totally with you there. Even with some games that maybe you wouldn't think, like some of the Call of Duty games, even obviously at the surface, they're not very deep, but they've still got some political elements, and then you hear the old, it's not political, and you're like, it clearly is. It's geopolitics. I mean, come on. And you think, I don't know if it is just this symptom of, again, ever since the lockdowns and everything, and this is something that I talked to some fellow creators about, the fact that for so many years, we've been stuck behind computers in our house and talking to people online, and I think that's kind of fostered, again, not overall, but I think for a lot of people, they've found these communities, and I use that very loosely, communities that think that there's no place for certain games that have a message. The one that always gets me, just when you were saying that about BioShock, is whenever someone talks about Star Trek not being political. Or even worse, Star Wars. And it's like, did you not watch the prequels? Did you not watch TNG? Like, come on, guys.
Yeah, but again, I think that's just depends on what people consider politics. Maybe people aren't for some reason, might not really deconstruct the socialism of, I don't even watch Star Trek, but I know it's quite socialist. And like, maybe if you don't have the language to really deconstruct the concepts that are brought up, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit too, I don't know, maybe not everyone has that toolbox. We have been told that no, politics, that is when there's a black person in the game. Socialism is an actual system of politics. But if you are not trained enough or like not well read enough to see the signs or understand what socialism actually is, and not just treat it as a slur, basically, that something is socialist, then you might not understand the concepts of a TV show like Star Trek. So I guess just the word politics, like what that is, has been a little bit morphed, I suppose. And just like you said, I think due to the pandemic and other things, like just social media in general and our algorithms, we get bundled up in our little bubbles, our echo chambers. It's so easy to just fall into the rabbit hole, I suppose, of, well, I don't like it, and people say this is political, so I guess it is. And I don't now wholesale everything that's related to this is bad.
Yeah, because you get a lot of people, and this is the thing that genuinely, it just fills me with a lot of dismay, to be honest, where you might have one of the absolute best games of all time that is basically digital art, as it were. It might have the perfect gameplay, it might have the perfect story, but then you go to play it, and then you get all of these people parroting the same phrases like, it's, as you were saying, it's diverse, there's a woman in it, or there's someone of a certain ethnicity in it, I'm not going to play this because of XYZ. And it's just, again, dismaying to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's sad, honestly. I haven't really looked it through, but I don't know if you know about it, but the woke game list made the rounds last year.
Oh, yes. The one that got me was when they put in Sonic Adventure because of, ironically enough, environmental theme. Yeah, I'm like, really?
One game that stuck out to me was Dave the Diver as well. Like, an amazing game. It's so brilliantly designed. I'm just playing through it right now, and like, it's such an amazing game. And the fact that it was not recommended because Dave is fat and there is a black guy and he's a chef. I think it's sad to feel like you have to limit the games that you consume based on such, in my opinion, silly things. It's so surface level. It just doesn't really matter, but they chose to put it in the game, and that was their choice as artists. And now you choose not to consume it because of it, when the game is amazing. So you are limiting yourself and the experience that you can have as a player, as a gamer, based on this. The only word I can think about is sad. I feel sorry for people who feel like they need to not play a game because of this. Because what's the worst that can happen? You see a fat guy who is a swimmer. Oh no. Like, then what? I don't know. It's sad.
I mean, to be honest, honest, if you go down to any local swimming pool, and I'm not calling out any overweight people going to swim, by the way, but if you go there, it's not the end of the world. You're not going to see someone like that.
I think you're going to be fine.
Yeah, it's like, what? Yeah, it's like they think they're going to burst into flames or something, or if you're like, oh no. It genuinely reminds me of when I was younger, and I've brought this up before, but when I was younger, I used to play a lot of very kid-friendly games, especially Pokemon and the like, and the more I grew up and I started getting into my late teens, I was like, okay, I should put these games away because I'm becoming an adult now. I should be playing more, and it sounds so stupid, by the way, but it's like I should be playing more adult games like Grand Theft Auto, Halo, Call of Duty, Gears of War. And then, of course, when I got to university, I went right back to Pokemon. That's the thing, though. It's so childish. Thinking back on it, it was just such a childish way to look at things. But the problem is, there's a lot of people who don't grow out of that. It is just so sad that they're missing out because they're listening to someone else. All that hard work that these particular developers have put in is going to fall on deaf ears if you get the loudest of these types of people coming up and going, oh, I don't like it because of XYZ. And it's not even because it's their opinion, that way. It is because somebody's instructed them to do that. Do you ever, because I'm guessing that even before game development, you were a gamer yourself.
Yeah, since I was 2 years old.
Yeah. Do you feel as if that attitude has changed? When you were younger, would you feel as if you'd be influenced by a loud and obnoxious person saying, oh, don't buy this game because, it's terrible or it's got a certain character in it?
I don't remember that at all, but I remember the times before social media. Back then, maybe you picked up the odd actual physical magazine about games and read about them. Otherwise, it was word of mouth or ads, or you just literally went to the store and looked at what games they had, and then you bought something if it looked good. So I don't at all remember. I mean, sure, of course, we talked among friends, and of course, certain friend group liked certain types of games, but it definitely wasn't, oh, no, this game has X, Y, Z in it, you can't buy it. Absolutely not. Maybe it was, oh, this is, I don't know, a shooter. It was more like genre-based, like, okay, what type of game is it? Do you think you would like it? No, this game sucks because, I don't know, it's for kids. Maybe just that surface level, like, oh no, Pokemon is for kids. But not even that. I don't think my friend group was like that. we kept playing types of games, I think, forever. So no, but again, I think it's social media. I think it's our bubbles, our algorithms that sort of dictate. If you fall into certain groups like YouTube or TikTok or whatever, sees that you are a certain type of person, then okay, you probably like this type of content, and then you fall into the rabbit hole of disliking certain types of games or really, really propping up other types of games, wherever it might be.
No, I'm totally with you there, because I also remember a time before the internet was very widespread. I still remember the dial-up era.
Yeah, same.
Oh, that noise will never leave my head. But I even remember going to Blockbuster to hire games and going, oh, that game looks cool, and oh, let me try this. And don't get me wrong, there were people who probably did say, oh, that's a terrible game, oh, that's a game for kids. But ironically enough, it probably would be coming from children to say, even in the playground, don't play this game because I've said it's terrible. And if that kid was popular enough, then people would go, oh, it's not great. But at the same time, yeah, there wasn't that pressure or as much pressure. And if there's any Pandalorians out there listening who disagrees with that, please reach out for this episode. I'd love to hear from you. But yeah, it seems as if the more connected we have become on the internet and things, there's a greater chance that we are going to get more opinions for better or for worse. And again, going back to KreatureKind, the fact that you have to, well, first of all, you have to decide whether or not it is a battle worth fighting in a way to say, and by battle, again, for legal reasons, I mean a verbal battle, but if it's a verbal battle or a debate that you want to get into, because sometimes it's just like shouting at a brick wall.
Also, today we have so many games, so I think it's sort of of fine to not like all games. All games are not for you, and that's fine. So like when I make a game, I don't make a game for everyone. And I think sort of the problem is when players see games that are clearly not for them and they sort of take offense. So like when they see a game, like, again, I think it's a bit sad to not play games based on very surface level things. But again, like, if you see that this game is clear not for me because I won't like it for one reason or another, then I wish more people would just move on and find another game, because I feel like a little bit too many people also feel the need to express their opinion when they dislike a game and when they feel excluded from the target audience, which is a shame because, like, again, there's so many games. As a game developer, I'm very aware of how many games are released on Steam every single day. There is a game for you no matter who you are. So I think it's just a shame that so many feel the need to also review bomb or whatever it might be, or harass the developers of a game that they dislike. It is fine to dislike a game or feel like a game is not for you, but then just move on. I've had to do it so many times. I just wish more people did the same.
That's the thing, though, talking about representation in these types of games, because I personally don't ever remember, and this is me speaking as a white guy from Scotland, I genuinely have never thought back to a game where I've said, oh, this game represents me, and it's like Gears of War with the big muscly men. I have never been that size, by the way. I've never kind of went, oh, I have to play this game because, oh, that represents me, because no, it doesn't. I mean, I've played so many indie games into my adulthood, and honestly, I feel as if more and more I'm falling into the indie rabbit hole as opposed to the kind of mainline games. Not that the AAA games are all terrible, because that would be generalising, but, you know, I've played games like What Remains of Edith Finch, Journey, again, Coffee Talk, Unpacking, those kind of games. And, you know, that's the thing, though. If I had this mentality of, oh, I'm not going to play these types of games, then I would have missed out on some amazing experiences. And of course, if I thought like that as well, we wouldn't be talking now, of course, about your fantastic game. And it is true. It's just so many people are missing out on these types of games that, let's face it, they need them in their lives, don't they? They need that. Yeah.
And I was thinking about that when you said as a kid, then you want to move on to more adult games. So you mentioned basically games that are violent, because kids are not allowed or shouldn't be allowed to play too violent games. But in my opinion, I think we're doing ourselves such a disservice to say that, oh, sex and violence, that's the sort of threshold if this game is for adults. Whereas, let's say Unpacking, that's a game I don't think a kid could fully, they could probably play it mechanically, but I think you have to have some life experience to fully appreciate the storytelling and like really fully understand. Because for those who are listening who haven't played the game, basically you are just unpacking and you are placing items in a new home, and you go through a person's life, several different phases, their relationships, their friendships, whoever they are living with. And it's such a beautiful way of showing a life and telling a life story. In my opinion, that is also an adult game, and like it's dealing with chronic illness and stuff like that. You've seen this story from a very emotional place. Maybe it can help you process things. Maybe that's not even the best example. For example, I played a game called Bury Me My Love. I don't know, have you heard about it?
I haven't played it, but I have heard of it, yeah.
So that was probably the most heartbreaking games I've ever played. When I finished it, I just sat and stared at my phone for I don't know how many minutes. So it's about your wife. You're from, I think it's Syria, or at least a country similar to Syria, and it was made around a time when a lot of people had to flee the country a few years ago. And you're basically texting with your wife as she's trying to make her way to Europe. And it's so heartbreaking. And like you get the messages as if she was actually texting you. So it's sort of real time, and you help her sort of make decisions along the way. And it's absolutely heartbreaking. It's a horrible game and it's beautiful. And I would never recommend that to a kid either. It's a very adult game. It sort of deals with very things that, especially at the time, still today, unfortunately, but especially at the time, very on top of people's minds. So you could sort of process what was going on, and you could understand better what was going on through the game. And in my opinion, that's also an adult game. And I think that the more of that kind of game we get, the better. Games that actually help us understand reality, understand ourselves, our relationships, whatever it might be. I'm not saying that we shouldn't also have violent games. That's completely fine. But I think we also need to have other types of adult games that talk about relationships or whatever it might be, understanding ourselves better, because there's so much more to life than violence. And my opinion, like, yeah, I've seen enough violence in games. I'm probably going to play many more violent games in my life, but also it would be cool to keep exploring other parts of being a human being through games. Because games are interactive. So by their nature, you can explore so much, and like you can understand things in a way that no other medium really can help you understand, because you are doing things. You are put in the shoes of the protagonist or however the game is played. It's so personal. It's so emotional in a way that no other medium is. And I think that's so cool. And we should use that even more to tell unique stories about things that teach us about life. So yeah.
Because that is such an important thing, especially in terms of game development as well. The fact that when you're putting out a game there, and we've all heard the controversial game lists where it's like, oh, look, it's totally not a scam, the game. And then it comes out, it's a scam, shock horror. And you're like, oh, great, we've got hundreds of these types of games all over Steam and whatnot. I think it's a holdover from a time where games weren't really treated as seriously as they are maybe nowadays. Again, I think we're kind of coming full circle to having that attitude of, oh no, games should be one particular archetype, it shouldn't be about this and that in real life. But because of the amount of indie games I've played personally, honestly, it opened my eyes to see how beautiful this medium can be for storytelling. I've played and also done an episode on games like, as I was saying, What Remains of Edith Finch, Firewatch, those types of games that would be considered as walking simulators, yet they're some of the most impactful stories that I've ever played. Same with Journey. The one that really got me, and I don't know if you've played this as well, was To the Moon.
I haven't played it yet. It's on my to-play list.
Oh my god, it is heartbreaking. I mean, it's obviously, without spoiling anything, I would wholeheartedly recommend it, because I'm one of these gamers that I was like, oh yeah, I'll play it. Never played it. And then, of course, I didn't play it until a couple of years ago, and it absolutely broke me. I was sobbing. I was, again, just watching the credits roll with tear-filled eyes, like, oh my god, how did this happen, kind of thing. Again, it's going back to something you were saying there, the idea of life experience for these games, because a lot of these games, a child probably could, at least gameplay-wise, they could definitely play them, but I don't think they would have got a lot out of them. And games like To the Moon, I am so glad I played it as an adult with more life experience as opposed to playing it in university, because I definitely wouldn't have got as much out of it. And there's just so many games like that. Even games like, you know, the Lucas Pope games, Papers, Please, Return of the Obra Dinn. Papers, Please, that absolutely broke me in a different way.
So good.
It's so good. And again, that's a game that my friend Adam and I reviewed a couple of seasons ago, but my god, the amount of times you just go on autopilot, you emotionally feel numb to the whole thing. You're just like, nope, yep, nope, let's do this invasive scan, yep, no problem. And then as soon as you step back, you're like, oh my god. I mean, it's a game, but at the same time, you just look at yourself going, is this the kind of person that this game's turning me into?
Exactly. Just to reflect on that, I think, again, that's why games are so powerful, because you did that. It wasn't someone else. You weren't watching someone in a movie or something. You did it, and the game made you do it. Sure, I mean, you can only do so many things in a game, but you can probably justify within the confounds, like the rules of the game, why you did it. I think that's such a beautiful way of showing, like, no, I mean, cruelty or whatever word you want to use, it can be found anywhere. And like, we can all be the bad guys. Are you even the bad guy in that game? You are doing cruel things to regular people, especially if you want your family to live. I think it's such a beautiful way of telling that story. And it would be very, very hard to tell that story in a good way in a movie, for example, because then it wouldn't be you anymore. You wouldn't make those decisions.
And I mean, even in some of the more mainstream games, or rather different genres like Spec Ops The Line.
Oh, also so good.
So
You're really taking off some of my favorite games here when it comes to the narrative and the way they tell the story. Yeah, also, I really recommend that game to everyone as well who hasn't played it. Because again, you are culpable. You did that. No spoilers, but...
The only thing I regret is the fact that I watched the story years and years ago before I actually got the chance to play it, because I thought, I'm not going to enjoy it. It's going to be a bog standard shooter. I did the same with BioShock, right enough, but then again, that got spoiled for me well in advance, but I still played both of them. They are just just games that you sit there, you look at the screen afterwards and you're like, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
What an emotionally taxing experience. And I remember one of my very good friends turned around to me and said, you have to play Spec Ops The Line. It's amazing. It's such an emotional journey. And I'm like, yeah, I'll get around to it. And then, of course, I'm texting them in the early hours of the morning going, I played Spec Ops The Line. It's so good. It's one of those games that you don't expect to be good going into it. Even with some of the other heavy hitter games, like the one that really took me off guard, going back to something like Gears of War, where essentially you play as a big muscly guy killing bug creatures and things, and it's like, all right, okay, this is a standard fare. But in the second and third game especially, and I don't know, have you played any of these?
A little bit, but not enough to fully know the full story.
I mean, the overall story, you can kind of go, yeah, it's your typical fare of man versus monster, but there's one character in it, and I won't spoil it for anyone who hasn't played it, but my God, it completely blindsided me when I saw how tragic his story was, both in the second one with them trying to find a particular someone, and then the third one, him trying to deal with just this world that's crumbling around him. And it surprisingly makes you tear up, and you're like, this is a game about muscly men fighting bug creatures, as I said. This shouldn't be this poignant, and it is. And I feel as if, as you were saying, that's exactly the point, that if you were playing it as a film, and I think that's why a lot of the David Cage games kind of fall at the wayside, because they do feel more like films. Although you press the prompts and everything, it doesn't have the same impact as you actually carrying out particular actions. And it's just that emotional resonance that these particular games have.
Yeah, I often talk about Spec Ops The Line in particular because it's such a Trojan horse as well. They knew who would play the game. They knew what they wanted to tell those people. War is not cool. It's horrible. Again, not going to spoil anything, but I think, for example, if you disagree entirely with me politically, you will probably not play my game. You will probably see it right away, like, okay, no, this is not for me. So I know I'm very conscious about the fact that my games will probably never fully reach the people who might, quote unquote, need it the most. And Spec Ops The Line, on the other hand, they knew their target audience, they knew what they wanted to say, and they said it in such an effective way. And I assume sort of the same with Gears of War then. I think that's really cool, and I think it's sometimes that can be the most effective way of really getting your point across, basically.
Something that's quite interesting about Spec Ops, and I don't know if you've heard about this with the lead writer, I think it's Walt Williams. He wrote a book called Significant Zero, just basically about his time as a writer and things, and he has a chapter specifically dedicated to Spec Ops The Line and his period with it, and it's quite an interesting read, because one of the things he was saying was at the very beginning of the game, you have this big bombastic helicopter sequence, a bit like any other shooter game of the time. You have to have that big and loud in-your-face moment, and that was a last-minute decision by the studio. They didn't really want to put it in to begin with, and then they said, oh no, we're going to put this in, grab the player's attention. And I think he got so angry at that, and again, not spoiling anything, that he wrote a cheeky wee retcon, as it were, into the story. Later on, there's a bit of dialogue that they change when you get to that particular moment later on in the game. So it's like a kind of flashback, then goes to a flash forward, and it's back and forth. And I think, yeah, he was very angry at that. But that is the interesting thing, though, isn't it? That a lot of studios, and again, I know it's something that you definitely don't do in your games. Your games are very open and honest about the message, the characters and things, but it's quite surprising, isn't it, that there's a lot of studios who kind of feel as if, oh, we need to have something like this, like jangling keys, as it were, in front of the player to say, look at our game.
Yeah. I mean, it's understandable in a way, especially AAA games or now quadruple A games. Their budgets are insane. So they need to bring in as many players as possible. So like they can't really, I want us to trust the player. I want us sometimes trust the viewer to get it. But I understand that so many game developers, so many studios feel like we literally cannot trust our players to not get bored. And again, there are so many games on the market. If you spend $5 on Steam, you can get, I don't know how many games right now. There's just so many titles out there competing against each other. So I sort of get the anxiety as developers. So like, we need to catch them, we need to get them, we need to make them stay. So it's a shame, especially when the creative vision or like the story suffers from it. But I think it's understandable. And sometimes whatever it takes to get the player to stay, to hear your message, sometimes you might have to sacrifice part of your vision to ensure that people actually get to the point. I think we both know which point though Spec Ops The Line that you should get to, basically. There's a very specific thing that happens that you do. If they didn't dangle the keys, maybe fewer players would get there. I don't know. But I think also if it was the publisher who was, I've also heard that they didn't always agree, everyone who worked on the project. And so it's a shame when it has to be like that, but also somewhat understandable.
Absolutely. There's definitely that line, well, no pun intended there, but there's definitely the line between what makes a game engaging story-wise, but then also trying to make it a fun experience. I have to say, the one that, especially for Spec Ops The Line, that really threw me off was when they were saying, oh, this is a tragic deconstruction of the FPS genre, or rather the shooter genre as a whole. By the way, we're going to include a fun multiplayer mode where you shoot one another, and you're like,
It was specifically the multiplayer mode that I was thinking about that. Apparently, there wasn't disagreement about that from what I heard.
Yeah. It's a fascinating game in all facets, I have to say. You know, whether you're focusing on the story or the gameplay or things like that, it is worth playing, I have to say.
Yeah.
Even in that, well, sorry, I say that, but I think it's been delisted now, hasn't it?
Oh, okay.
At least I think, as of this episode, I think it was delisted off of Steam. Hopefully I'm wrong there and it's been put back up, or maybe it was Xbox, I can't remember, it was one of them anyway, which is such a shame, because if a game like that's getting lost to time, then it has to be brought back.
Yeah.
More people have to be traumatized.
Yes. I mean, at least single player. I understand if they won't support multiplayer forever, but single player definitely should still be around.
100%. And also, if you ever see anybody suggest games like Homefront and say, oh, it's similar to Spec Ops The Line, no, it isn't. Your friends are lying to you. Yeah, I don't know about you, but I did not see eye to eye with that game after playing it. I was like, no.
I know very little about it, but I can imagine.
Yeah, kind of as a closing point, and going back to your games, of course, as I was saying, you've done so many fantastic games, obviously not just with KreatureKind, but also with BioSquare, with Pendulous Swing, which is a game I have to say I am really curious about checking out, by the way.
Yeah, please do. I hope to return to it one day, because I know there are some bugs and so on that I really want to squash, and my players have been reminding me about them. The problem is just in the reality of having the funds and the time and everything to address it. So I really want to get back to it and maybe do some updates, give it some love at some point. But for now, I have to focus on KreatureKind and try and get that game in front of as many people as possible instead. So one game at a time.
Do you feel as if you struggle with that, though, that you say one game at a time and then an idea hits you and you go, I could probably fit one more game in?
It's very hard as an indie to stay focused sometimes. So I was actually very strict now when I was finishing up KreatureKind that I was not allowed to start working on the next game, because I already know what the next game is going to be, or I have an idea. Any time that I could have spent on KreatureKind, I had to spend on KreatureKind. So maybe there were some hours late at night where I was like, I literally cannot code anymore. My brain is fried, but I'm just gonna start on the mirror board. I try to be very, very strict and not get sidetracked, but it's hard. And again, like, I would love to go back to previous games and give them some love as well, because they deserve it, and I think the players who bought them deserve it as well. But you just, in the reality is, at least for me, who has not yet really made a hit, I need to sort of focus my time where I think it's the most, because my time is so limited and I have to focus it on things that I can really motivate, basically. So going back to a game that's many years old now and no one is playing is hard to motivate. So I want to do it one day, but just the realities of being an indie. So like I said, one game at a time. Right now I'm focusing on KreatureKind, and I really want to release more updates as well. It will come to new platforms, so if anyone does not want to play it on PC, you can watch this space. Go to my socials, so Valiant socials, I will be posted there. But I want to fix any bugs that are still left, give some additional content and features and so on as well. So I'm going to keep working on it for some time. We'll see exactly how long, but as long as people are asking for more content and more updates.
Oh no, absolutely. I genuinely think that for all the Pandalorians listening out there, I'm not just saying this again because you're on here, but I do think that KreatureKind is one of these games that, again, and this might sound hyperbolic to say, oh, it's so important, but games like KreatureKind are so important in the sense that it's such a different type of game. As you were saying at the very beginning, it's very tongue-in-cheek. You know, it's got that comedy and that sense of levity to it, but at the same time, it is still talking about a very important message, and it's not shying away from that. It is so important to have games like that nowadays. Well, I say nowadays, but any time really, because video games as a whole have evolved into just this art form, haven't they?
Just really appreciate your kind words. And I think, I don't know, if they really are an art form, games now, and it's such a huge topic, but I just really love making games and all of the parts that go into making games as well. Games are such a beautiful combination of visual art and music, and then there's coding as well, which is more technical, and there's the marketing. There's so many different parts that need to sort of come together to make a game. It's a privilege to be able to make games, and like I said, I think as well, it believes so deeply in industry and like games as a whole and our power. It's nice to be able to be a small part of this and maybe do something new, or maybe change someone's mind, or just, if nothing else, just entertain people. So I'm really thankful for your kind words and I hope that more people like the game as well.
Honestly, if you're listening to this and you think that sounds right up my alley, honestly, go for it. Because it is a fantastic game, and if you want to hear my full thoughts on this game, if you go back a couple of days to Tuesday, you'll hear our Chatsu Shorts episode where I reviewed the game, and honestly, I cannot recommend it more. I think it is just such a fantastic game. It's such a fantastic idea, and yeah, this is definitely a game studio that deserves your attention. So go for it. Get out your wallets and go to Steam now. Genuinely, it's an absolutely fantastic experience.
Thank you.
Anna, thank you so much for coming on this episode today and discussing your absolutely fantastic games. I just want to shout out one more, Midwinter, which I didn't shout out when I was going through the list, so I'm just giving it its moment in the sun, as it were.
That was my first game as an indie. I just quit my job at Paradox and I had 6 months to make a game, and I did actually. I think it was 6 months and 1 week, if I remember correctly. So a very simple point-and-click game, very based on Swedish folklore. Wanted to bring that out in the game. So if you want to, you can check out that as well.
Oh, don't you worry, I will be. But yeah, before we wrap up, where can these amazing listeners at home find your content and also find your games? In particular, of course, KreatureKind.
KreatureKind, of course, is available on Steam right now. It's KreatureKind with a K in the beginning, and it's just one word. And the other games are available there as well. So it's not Biosquare yet, unfortunately, but we're working on it. Pendula Swing and Midwinter in Swedish are available on Steam as well. We have a website which is Valiant.se, where you can read the latest news and everything. Right now on socials, I'm most active on Blue Sky. That's Valiant.se as our username. So do follow us there. We really appreciate it. I have done some TikToks. I believe it's at Valiant Game Studio as one word. I've been a little bit quiet recently because it's just a lot to keep up with social media, even though I should do it now that I have a game out. It's just a lot. But I say right now, you can catch us on Blue Sky, and that's where we update most often. So if you really want to hear the latest news, that's where we have it. We have a Discord server as well. So if you just go to valiant.se/Discord, you find that as well. If you want to talk to me directly, that's the best way to find me.
And if you would like to find more of our content here at Chatsunami as well, then you can check us out at our website, chatsunami.com, as well as all good podcast apps. I also want to thank our amazing Pandalorian patrons, Robotic Battle Toaster, Sonia, Ghostie, and Cryptic1991 2021. Thank you so much for supporting the show. And if you would like exclusive content, early access and the like, then you can check us out at our Patreon page, patreon.com/Chatsunami. This podcast is a member of the Podpack Collective. For more information, check us out at Twitter/X over at Podpack Collect. But until then, thank you all so much for listening. Stay safe, stay awesome, stay hydrated, and most importantly, go check out KreatureKind. Go on, I know you want to. Go.